The rain was coming down so hard that evening that the whole city seemed to disappear behind a curtain of silver water. I was halfway across an empty street, clutching a worn leather bag against my chest, when two little girls suddenly stepped into my path. They were soaked to the skin, shivering beneath a broken umbrella, and their frightened eyes looked straight into mine. The older girl reached for my hand and whispered something that made my heart stop. "Our father left us your name." I had never seen those girls before. I had never met their father. Yet somehow, they knew my name. Before I tell you what happened next, if stories about kindness, unexpected second chances, and the people who enter our lives for a reason touch your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. You never know when a simple story might remind someone that even after loss, life can still offer a second chance. I stared at the girls, trying to understand what they meant. The older one looked about 11, while the younger could not have been more than 7. Their clothes were thin and soaked through, their shoes covered in mud, and the younger girl was holding a small envelope so tightly that her fingers had turned pale. I knelt beneath the awning of a closed shop and asked them where their mother was, but neither girl answered. The older one only opened the envelope with trembling hands and pulled out a photograph. The moment I saw it, the world around me seemed to grow silent. In the photograph was a man I had not seen in 17 years. His name was Daniel. Daniel had been my closest friend when we were young. We had grown up on the same street, shared schoolbooks, dreams, and countless afternoons talking about the lives we wanted someday. But life had separated us. I moved away after my mother became sick, and Daniel left the city a few years later. We lost contact completely. I had sometimes wondered what became of him, but as the years passed, his memory became one of those quiet chapters of my life that I believed had already ended. I looked again at the photograph. Daniel was older, thinner, but unmistakably the same person. My hands began to shake. I asked the older girl where he was, and she lowered her eyes. She told me their father had died 3 weeks earlier. Their mother had passed away several years before, leaving Daniel to raise them alone. He had worked whatever jobs he could find, saving every little amount for their future. But before he died, he had given his daughters one instruction: if anything happened to him, they were to find me. I could barely breathe. I asked why. The girl handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Daniel's handwriting. "My dear friend, if my daughters are standing in front of you, then I am no longer here to protect them. I know I have no right to ask this after all these years, but you are the only person whose kindness I trusted completely. I have told them about you. I told them that when we were young, you once gave away your only winter coat to a stranger who had none. I told them that you never cared whether anyone thanked you. I don't know where life will take my girls, but if you can help them find a safe place, I will leave this world without fear." I read those words again and again. I remembered that winter. Daniel had been there. I had completely forgotten it, but he hadn't. The girls were watching me silently. They weren't asking for money. They weren't asking for a home. They were simply waiting to see whether the person their father trusted would turn away. I looked at them and felt something inside me break. At that time in my life, I wasn't exactly strong enough to rescue anyone. I was struggling myself. After losing my mother, I had moved into a tiny apartment, working long hours at a grocery store just to pay rent. My savings were almost gone, and some days I skipped meals so I could afford medicine and electricity. I had spent years believing that I was barely keeping myself afloat. Yet standing there in the rain, I realized something Daniel had understood long before I did. Sometimes helping someone doesn't mean having everything. Sometimes it means giving whatever little courage you have. I took the girls to my apartment that night. It wasn't beautiful. The roof leaked near the kitchen, the heater worked only when it wanted to, and there was barely enough furniture for 3 people. But I made them hot soup, found dry clothes, and gave them the only comfortable bed while I slept on the couch. The younger girl asked me before falling asleep if I was going to send them away in the morning. I told her no. And for the first time since their father died, she smiled. The following weeks were difficult. There were documents to arrange, relatives to contact, school records to recover, and endless questions about guardianship. I discovered that Daniel had left behind almost nothing financially. His entire life had been spent keeping his daughters safe. But inside a small wooden box, I found something unexpected: savings envelopes, school certificates, drawings from the girls, and dozens of letters he had written but never sent to me. In one of those letters, Daniel confessed that he had searched for me several times but never found me. He wrote that whenever life became difficult, he remembered the promise we had made as teenagers, that no matter how far life took us, we would never become strangers to kindness. That sentence changed me. I had spent years thinking my life had become small because I had lost the people I loved. But those two girls slowly taught me that love doesn't always return in the same form in which it leaves. The older sister, Emma, began helping me with household chores. The younger one, Lily, filled the apartment with drawings. One picture showed 3 people standing beneath a yellow umbrella while rain fell around them. At the bottom, in crooked handwriting, she had written, "Our new family." I cried when I saw it. Months passed. The girls returned to school. I found additional work and eventually moved us into a modest home with 2 bedrooms. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was ours. There were arguments over homework, laughter during dinner, burned pancakes on Sunday mornings, and nights when we sat together remembering Daniel. Years later, Emma went to college. Lily became fascinated with art and began painting. I watched them grow from 2 frightened children standing in the rain into confident young women who carried their father's kindness wherever they went. One evening, Emma came home with a small wooden box. Inside was the original photograph of Daniel. She placed it on the table and told me that she had finally understood why her father had left them my name. It wasn't because he believed I could give them a perfect life. It was because he knew I would give them something more important, a chance to believe that they were still worth loving. I looked at the photograph and whispered Daniel's name. For 17 years, I thought I had lost my friend. But that rainy evening, I realized he had found his way back to me through 2 little girls carrying his final act of love. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness is never wasted, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a little hope today. And before the story ends, I want to ask you something special. Comment, "Kindness always finds its way home," if you believe one small act of compassion can change someone's entire life. That night, years after the rain had stopped, I stood by the window and watched Emma and Lily laughing together in the garden. I finally understood the truth Daniel had known all along. We don't always get to choose the people who change our lives. Sometimes they arrive unexpectedly, soaked by the rain, carrying nothing but a name and a little hope. And sometimes, when we open the door for them, we discover that they were never the ones who needed saving. They were the ones who came to save us from believing that our best days were already behind us.